All right, man. Welcome to the Pat Life Podcast. As always, I'm Patrick, and today I have with me Mr. Zach with GudTims4All. How are you doing, man?
Pretty good, Patrick. Thank you so much for having me back on.
Dude,
Really,
my pleasure. Last conversation we had with you, Lucas, and I, and if he comes back on, great. But it was just really opening my eyes to a lot of the things we're talking about in regards to electricity and just this system that we're currently in and how we take it from the macro into the micro in the body and plants. It just was blowing my mind, and I really love what you guys are looking into and diving into, which is why I was diving into your guys' pages even more to look at some of the things that you're talking about. So I thought we can really just start chipping away at some of those things. First thing on my mind specifically was the incoherent electrostatic acceleration that you did an awesome video on, man.
oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that was my the last one that I've done. I think it was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I worked hard on that, and I had a lot of help on that one too. In the description, if you go and look, you'll see there's a few names in there that really helped me a lot with the research and the kind of how I worded it, getting it
right.
to try to make it as comprehensible as possible. We're using scientific terms and words, and I just wanted to make sure that, Joe Schmo off the street that doesn't care about this stuff could watch it and still comprehend it.
Absolutely.
So I'm
I mean,
hoping
you
that's what I shoot for.
you did a fantastic job, and I think with as well as just placement of pictures, I think that's the big thing with today, because when you're dealing with very heavy scientific literature and words that maybe people aren't familiar with, it is important to have illustration to put it together. I've been reading The Universal One from Walter Russell, and as much as he gets into it, and there's a lot of, you have to really think about what he's saying. The pictures really do kind of put in such simplistic terms, and I compare that ability to comprehend. So you guys did a fantastic job.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's that's the hardest part, really. The writing took me maybe a week, and then finding all the pictures and video editing. Well, the writing, it's like a week on and off. I sit down for,
Right.
it might have taken me 4 hours total to do the writing.
Right.
But then finding the right picture for that's the part I cannot stand. I despise video editing, just for that simple fact is trying to find the right picture that you can use and put in a video, or that right little clip of a video that's just perfect to try to explain what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's, yeah, that's my scourge. As much as people say, oh, you're real good at video editing, I don't like doing it at all.
Yeah, it's one of those things. They're like, no, you're really good. And you're like, well, it's unfortunate because I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, I'd rather be in the lab tinkering, playing with something.
Absolutely, man. Well, let's dive in. Let's just for those who haven't seen the video or know anything of what you've been talking about, would you mind just kind of starting off describing just kind of what it is or where it came from, and kind of we can segue from there.
Yeah, no problem. A lot of people think that here on Earth, at least, we're talking heliocentric model here, the globe. What I believed just 6 years ago, and grew up on.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know any of this stuff before I started really trying to educate myself on it. So that's why it's when I tell people this stuff and they've never heard it before, I'm not surprised. This is that stuff that they hide from you.
Right.
So pretty much we were all taught that gravity was the apple falling and hitting Isaac Newton in the head. Mm-hmm. And the stuff here on Earth, at least nowadays, maybe back then in the 1600s, that's what they called gravity. But now, at least since Einstein, they've considered gravity to be what holds the planets in their orbits.
Right.
What holds solar system, the sun going around the solar system, and the solar system's going around the great attractor, things like that. The moon's going around a planet. Gravity has nothing to do with objects falling here on Earth.
Right.
Gravity takes place between two electrically neutral objects. Well, nothing that is within our ionosphere, they like to call it, this imaginary Peter Pan type thing that's never been recreated in a lab, an ionosphere, but they need it because
Right.
the way that our electric field is laid out here on Earth, it grows at a steady gradient, constant gradient, 100 volts the first meter, 200 volts the second meter, 300, and so on. It just keeps going.
And this is measurable.
Yes, it's measurable, repeatable. Anybody can do this stuff. This is one of those things they couldn't hide from us when they were making the globe model. This is why they had to create the ionosphere, because the way electricity works on a sphere, it would radiate at the inverse square law. The negative charge should fall off much faster than it does here on Earth. It would be at 100 volts at the first meter, then 200 volts at the second, then 400 at the third, then 800, then 1600. It would keep doubling itself as it fell off. And we just don't see that. That's not what happens. So they came up with the idea of an ionosphere. Maxwell actually changed Ampere's equation that said, without a matter in a vacuum, an electric field does not exist.
Right.
It has nothing to permeate on.
Mm-hmm.
So all the static electricity sticks to the objects and doesn't. So they kind of just made up this ionosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And even Walter Lewin.
Yeah, I'm listening.
He changed it without any experimental.
So
without any experimental observation. James Clerk Maxwell, Maxwell's equations. Those are our laws of electricity. But the thing is, he didn't write any of these laws himself. He just changed them a little bit, tweaked them. These were well-established laws of electricity before he even came around.
Right.
I think the first one is Coulomb's law, or no, Gauss's law, and then 2 Faraday laws, and then Ampere's law are considered Maxwell's 4 equations that dictate the laws of nature with electricity. And that's one of the other things that drives me nuts about this. There's this kick about scientific experiments. It can't be real unless it's proven scientifically in a scientific experiment. Well, that's the thing about the laws of nature. They can't be proven from here on Earth. To prove one of these things in a scientific experiment, I would have to step outside the ionosphere. Now, the only place that could happen would be in a vacuum, which nature abhors. So if you show me anywhere here on Earth in this realm that's a vacuum, void of a electric field, hey, I'll try to go there and test it.
Right.
But until then, stop asking me to prove this. It's a law of nature. They're laws. They can't be tested that way. Right. That's why they just work always, no matter where you are, what you're doing. You plug these 2 electrodes in, and this is how the electricity is going to work. Right. The positive's going to flow to the negative. You put it on. Yeah, it's so frustrating. It really is. Yeah. But I understand, because I didn't know all this stuff. I mean, I had to go and buy the Van de Graaff generator and the electrophorus and the electroscope. And instead of just taking these men's words for it, I went out and tested it myself to see if I could recreate all the tests that they did.
So let's stop there, because I did see in your video, I believe it's in the incoherent electrostatic acceleration video with the balloon that you had, and you're showing the changing in obviously its height, its altitude. Do you want to just kind of explain what you did, and we can kind of go from there?
Yeah, we were trying to show that if you change the electric potential of an object, it will appear to change the weight of the object, at least on a scale. Now, all the scales that I had they had some kind of metal parts in it. So I would put the stuff on a scale and charge it, but is the scale interacting with the metal inside the scale, or this or that? So I really didn't count that as being, absolute. So I sat there and I was thinking and thinking and thinking of a way to do this. And I thought, hey, let's hang it from balloons and make it buoyant, and then see if we can show the object get heavier and make the balloons come down a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's really just a new way of weighing things, you
Yeah.
know,
Which is
without any mechanical instruments.
well, which is a great, from also just an observation standpoint, and not being, necessarily present. We're seeing something in regards to that, as you said, that buoyancy, right? Whereas you said with the scale, it's easy to mess with scales. It's, as you said, there's the metal aspects. It could be an offset scale. There's so many components, but if we're observing a balloon, for the most part, what you're just seeing is just obviously this balloon either filled with air or helium, depending on what's in there. So it's just it's definitely allowing us also as an observer to see the experiment with a little bit more of just like, all right, what we're seeing right now is this. This is exactly what's happening. And then, as you said, as you change the electric potential, we're then observing what that electric potential looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it can't be considered a scientific experiment. And I don't even use that word, science or experiment. I'm a zeteticist. I use logic and reason.
Right.
Some things can't be, yeah, I'll test things. The scientific method is a great tool,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not the only tool in your tool chest. There's so many things, because the scientific method involves human senses.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't sense it with your human senses, then you can't use the scientific method. You can't observe the phenomenon,
Right.
without observing it. So if
Right.
it's not a visible phenomenon or an audio or, puts off a smell or something like that, then you really can't observe it. But it's still like electricity in this
Mm-hmm.
electric field. You can't see it. You can see lightning strikes, things like that, discharges, but without measuring it, with a man-made instrument, you don't know what's actually going. It's the same thing with the density of a liquid. We don't know how dense it is until we actually measure the density.
Mm-hmm.
It's, yeah. So there's so much about the scientific method that is great. It really nails things home and gets rid of all the nonsense. But we
Right.
can't throw out the laws of nature because they can't be tested scientifically. What you have to do is disprove the laws of nature.
Mm-hmm.
Go out and show me somewhere that these laws don't work
Right.
anywhere. That's what I was shooting for when I started testing them. And that's why I call out the ionosphere every chance I get, because it's one of those laws of nature, but there was no testing done at all, scientific or otherwise. They can't recreate this.
Yeah.
And there's been three well-known, physicists who have been published many times who have brought this up over the last 100 years.
Right.
And no physicist has ever answered the question
Right.
on how this works.
So this is showing, just for those watching, it's not just you coming up with this thought. As you said, it's looking at the people in those positions and the literature and just the back and forths, the debates or the lack thereof, and what your conclusion is through that observation, research, logic, rhetoric, all those different components, reasoning. You start to see, okay, well, there isn't anything to prove this is being said. Um, and all that being said, what from the information that is out there, then what would be an alternative or the more appropriate explanation to what they're calling the ionosphere?
Mm-hmm. I think it's an actual physical surface.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wouldn't so much say a dome surface. That could
Mm-hmm.
be something totally different. But
Right.
somewhere up there is a Gaussian surface, we call them.
Yeah.
It's a real or imaginary object. I mean, I don't know how. That's for doing math, like
Right.
calculating how high up into the atmosphere. So you can have an imaginary layer right here that you want to know the exact electrical potential at that point.
Right.
So they could make imaginary Gaussian surfaces. But I think this is an actual, kind of like Lucas's model. If there was, you know, a huge copper plate above us and a huge zinc plate below us, and we're the
Right.
dielectric in between, then all this stuff would happen,
Right.
what we're seeing.
and this is real quick that this, as I said, I was watching a lot of your videos. This goes to the homemade battery that you guys were showing, and then also just kind of talking about was the with the diluted water in the two different flasks, and then just showing that they put what was it, a zinc sulfate as well as a copper sulfate to,
Yeah, just some salts
right,
into distilled water, and then you can make a battery out of it.
right, and
It's
understanding,
all these things are right here around us. Zinc is in everything. You have so much zinc in your body right now.
right.
Everything on the ground, every metal has zinc in it. Everything does. It's amazing.
Right. And this is what's important with understanding the different components of the electrostatic incoherent electrostatic acceleration, understanding that metals, as Lucas talks about, in you as well, with the different zodiacs and things have relations to metals, and there's the importance behind that is when you actually then take it to the person, right? And as you just said, we are electric, we carry these charges. Obviously, there's also a magnetism to us as well. But when you're dealing with an imbalance of any kind, of that electricity, right? If you look at your battery that you guys were showing, if there was an imbalance there, what is that going to do to that charge? The output then became one
Hmm.
voltage, right? So what does that do? Let's just, looking at ourselves now for a sec. If we have an imbalance, right, we're lacking minerals, we're lacking these different metals that are necessary. What is it doing? One of the biggest ones that we know about is obviously iron in the blood, and there's a lot of risk factors. And,
Copper.
yep, complications come when there's a deficiency, right? Or the body isn't able to process and or allow it to do its function appropriately. So it's not far fetched. And obviously, looking at the bigger picture, right? To go, okay, well, if there's a mishap in our body because of a lack of these metals and the solution basically that allows these currents to pass, then let's look at the bigger scale, right? We're now different than this system that we're in. We're not separate from it. We're a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's as alive as we are.
Yeah.
That's the craziest part about it. That took me the longest thing to realize, is that everything here is alive. I
Yeah.
mean, the rocks grow so fast compared to what we were taught.
Hmm.
They'll tell you, oh, it takes millions and millions of years to turn this piece of wood and petrify it into a rock.
Right.
Where, at least here in North Carolina, I know, I go up there quite a bit, just across state line. It's like 20 miles away, and we have some friends up there. And she's
Mhm.
got a nice little creek in her backyard, and you can tap on some of the tree roots that are in the water still, and they're solid as they're stone
Wow.
already. While the tree is still alive, the root system is stone. There's
Interesting.
a waterfall in, I think it's in Asia somewhere,
Hmm.
and people hang stuff underneath this waterfall, and there's so many minerals in this waterfall that the stuff petrifies within months.
Wow.
You could, yeah, they have petrified so many different things. If water is constantly rushing over something and there's a lot of minerals in it,
Hmm.
everything will absorb these minerals and solidify.
Right.
Even human beings. There was a gentleman, I think it was Tennessee, 12 years after he had passed away, his wife passed, and they were gonna, they dug the hole next to his grave to put her in, and they found there was a natural spring that popped up
Oh,
underneath his grave, and it had put a hole through his coffin and everything, and it really messed up the wood. Well, when they opened the coffin, they got him a new one and everything. When they went to go pull the body out, his arms and legs had decomposed as they normally do, but where the spring water was running over his body, it petrified into a stone. He looked like a statue, his body did,
wow.
where that water was running over. And that was just 12 years. The human body was petrified.
Dude.
So,
Yeah. Well, this goes to, obviously, I can't confirm any of it, but when you look at these big, mountains and these big rocks that look like tree stumps, right?
mhm,
Was it antediluvian? What,
yeah,
it- what, it- how do you say it?
the antediluvian floods.
Yeah, I obviously can't confirm or deny, but when you do see the comparison, right, the macro, the micro, you start to see a lot of these things go, wow, that does look similar. So it definitely isn't out of the it's not out of the equation for sure. Um, but
No, they talk about Jack and the Beanstalk, the old woman who lived in a shoe.
right.
That's a big shoe.
I
You
know.
know, there's Paul Bunyan, and there's giants, not just like our fairy tales, but fairy tales from all over this plane
Right.
that people have in their cultures about these giant, enormous, but not just like 10, 12 footers,
Oh yeah.
even 20 footers. I'm talking tall as the sequoias, you know, like
Yeah.
200 some odd foot people. I
I
couldn't
mean,
even imagine that. I was trying to imagine it the other day. I was
yeah.
standing next to a tree that's about 100 feet tall, and I was like, three of those? No way. I can't even tell.
I
There's
know,
no
right?
way.
It's hard to comprehend. Well, what's so funny is
Yeah.
I went to a handful of years back. I went to Egypt, and I went to the one of the Egyptian museum, and we had a tour guide, and she was talking about this one specific. I think it's just like a statue of some kind, but she was like, oh, this was the pharaoh or this was the queen, and she's like, now you see this guy here, and I was like, yeah, and because the lady, the way she was sitting, she was covering the whole seat, just normal sitting. The kids were below, but she was relatively just ginormous to these kids. And then you saw the husband, and he was sitting in the seat next to her, but like his feet were like this far from like touching the ground. Obviously, it's a stand. And she goes, do you know what that is or what's going on? I'm like, no. And she's like, do you see how short he is? I was like, yeah. She's like, he was a dwarf. And I was like, oh. But it was like, for me, I was looking at these statues, and I'm not saying I thought what we're talking about, but I was like, I don't know, man. I go, maybe it was something like I just didn't really think much, but it just didn't really, like, I don't know, something wasn't mending, because I was thinking of just, obviously, while I was there, I'm looking at the size of these statues and or these obviously the pyramids themselves, and I'm like, I mean, they're maybe,
Yeah.
I
Are
don't
you
know, but
saying dwarves built these things?
yeah, and I was like, could be, I don't know, but it was one of those things that just really kind of got my wheels
Didn't,
turning while I
yeah,
was
didn't
there.
fit.
I was like, people built this, or whoever was. I was like, what is, I mean, it's like we're not understanding history and knowing that obviously architects and people now, engineers, can't even recreate that. I'm like, there's such an intelligence that we don't understand. There is a brute strength that we don't understand.
I
Um,
put it as we are living in the movie Idiocracy right now.
yeah,
It's not 500 years from now. It's not 100 years from now. We are the pinnacle of Idiocracy. We're coming out of it finally.
right,
At least, you know, some of us are. We're starting to rub our eyes and look around and be like, wait a minute
right.
here. Something's wrong.
Well,
But no, what they knew back then, like you were saying, somebody
right,
built these things and we can't do it. That was the pinnacle of
yeah.
technology. We are living in idiocracy times
Well,
as we speak.
it's even just that disconnect of, as we said in our last time talking about nature, right? It's like we a lot of us don't even know if we were to forage what we're looking for.
Mm.
A lot of people enjoy, myself included, the medieval time type shows, and you hear and see them like, oh, we're gonna go to the forest to get medicine and herbs, and so we're there's an infatuation with us watching these types of shows, not maybe always grasping or realizing, right, of even just that connection to the intelligence of the land, intelligence of the body, um, the alchemy, obviously, with these different concoctions or whatever it is that we're doing, let alone just structures and engineering, right? Like that itself is obviously so complex, but even just, hey, is this good for me? And can I eat this? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, most people don't, you know, we destroy the most nutritious things growing in our yards, like your dandelions, your
Mhm.
clovers, your sorrels, all these super high nutrition. You could live off of these alone. You know, you don't even, they're way more nutrition than soy or any of that stuff that, you know, any stuff you even grow in your garden. These wild plants that people like to call weeds. That's
Yeah.
my four-letter word. I don't like the word weed. They're misunderstood plants. That's how what I
Yeah.
consider them.
Well, if I may, real quick, I was just speaking last week with another farmer, and one of the things he was saying is he actually keeps his weeds in in his field, because a lot of weeds have such a deep rooted system that
Yep.
actually is pulling up all of these vitamins and minerals that may be lacking on more of the topsoil for your whatever you're growing and planting, which is was so fascinating to me, because I was like, yeah, there's when you look at that, there's nothing that's out of place. It's just looking at it more of like, okay, this is trying to tell me something, as you've said, and you and Lucas have made clear. It's the same thing with the body. My job is looking at, okay, something's being said here. So it's just trying to figure out what it is, right? It's not oh, there was a malfunction or there's a mishap. It's like, no, this is trying to speak. Am I listening? Am I paying attention?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, it's all about listening. Um, when you like, I love my garden. I love the plants and my house plants. I have one that I leave outside. It's a mums,
mhm,
and I walked by it the other day, and it told me, not audibly, but in my head, I just heard it say, "Hey, I'm thirsty. I need some water."
right.
And it wasn't. I know it wasn't me just saying, it looks like it needs water. They speak to us. When you get those little intuitions, people like to call them, those are you have to follow those. Those are very real. Like you were saying, when you saw this is a midget, you were like, I
Yeah.
don't know about that. That was your intuition saying bullshit alert. Sorry. Like alert, alert, alert.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This does not compute. Something's wrong here.
Right.
We have to listen to those little voices that we are so much more powerful. We
Right.
really are. And they've turned that off in us.
Well, and that's the thing that talking about, kind of going back to the stuff that you've been posting and electricity, is because for me in my job, it was with clients and seeing that I was tapping into this moment where I was seeing like, you're not there's a potential that I can see that you're on the cusp of, are you willing to take it? It's not that it's not there, it's, are you willing to
Mhm.
accept it? And it was one of those things that when we would start, I was trying to figure out how to navigate this, and get them to that place or help them see it. And when we would do that, it was one of those things where it became this synchronicity where, they'd come in and we kind of just knew where they were at times of like, could we push that limit a little bit more, or where would we put our attention? And if they didn't necessarily approach something with that mindset, they already knew before they were going in, like, oh, I wasn't there. I knew it. I felt it. It's, so, as you said, just really tapping into self and that intuition. And with everything in the world, everyone wants to change the world to some capacity. And I think no matter what your outlook is, it doesn't matter. It's just like, all right, well, it all starts within, right? It's trying to figure out that person within. And it's not easy, but it, as you said, when you allow yourself to take a step back and know, okay, well, everything that we're being told isn't quite exactly that. Maybe it's time to really listen and hear people like yourself or others that are trying to explain using, equations and research and different tests and experiments to be like, look, yes, this is further validating. So that being said, you have more potential. Go find it. Go grasp it.
Mhm.
Go live that. And here's how we can help you by looking, as we said, with like, the constellations and looking at moon and sun and planets. It's like, this isn't what necessarily we're being told, but understand it's being held by forces, electricity. You are electric, you know what I mean? You start going down and just really nailing it, and you go, I haven't, okay, what creates electric current? Metals. All right, I have metals in me. The foods, soil. Is this food that I'm eating, does it come from the soil? Does it come from clean soil? you know
Yeah, so much of that is spot on right there. Um,
well,
I, I was back to the intuition part real quick.
yeah.
I know it's hard at first to listen to that little voice in your head. I know,
Mhm.
but I've been doing it for since 2018. I am I listen to that voice adamantly now. Every once in a while, I'll ignore him. You know, take a day off and be like, I just want to lay in bed today and
Right.
just relax for a day. But since I've started doing it, I mean, because the little voice was telling me to go on walkabout. For 20 years, I ignored this voice. I wanted it since I was about 20. That little voice was saying, go see the world,
Hmm.
go out there and walk around. Everything's going to be okay,
Right.
you know? And I finally happened when I was 40. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. So I quit my job, you know, moved it, didn't re-sign my lease, and just I planned for it.
Hmm.
And it was scary. It was terrifying. And there was a couple times on the road that, if I wouldn't have listened to that little voice, I could have got hurt.
Right.
I would have been dumb and followed some people I didn't know off into the woods, or, something
Right.
like that. And that little voice was like, no, you don't, no, don't do that. That's dumb.
Hmm.
But since I've started listening to my little voice, my life has been so wonderful.
That's great, man.
I've met so many great people. And I don't, I mean, making money isn't what drives me. If making money is what drives you, then still listen to that little voice, but it's going to be telling you different things. It'll tell you how to get all the things you want.
Hmm.
And me, my goal is to help as many people as I can,
Right.
educate as many people as I can while I'm here on how to take care of ourselves and not be dependent upon a system that doesn't care about us. So I learned about growing my food, making my own medicine. And now that's what I do. I travel around. Well, I've been with Cami and Bob for over a year now, so I can't really say I travel around too much.
Right.
But like this last week, I went over to Karen Bees and helped them with their garden. And then I went over to Just Jack's and helped him and Carolyn with their garden. Then I helped the neighbor today and the other neighbor yesterday. And I don't like money. I don't want. She made me take money today because I was out there for like 6 hours in her yard. And
Yeah.
she's like, no, 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 no. And she went inside and came back. She's like, I got to go run to the bank. And she had some money in her hand. I was like, nope, I didn't even look at it. I was
Right.
like, here, I'll take that, whatever it is. That's fine. Put it in my back pocket. I was like, we're square.
Right.
It wasn't about the money. It's about, there's certain rules that I follow. They're not the laws of men. They're the laws of that little voice inside you. Don't kill people. Don't go hurting animals unless you're going to be, you need to, unless you have to consume it to survive.
Right.
Be good to your neighbor, and don't mess with other people's significant others. Don't
Right.
hurt people. And that's it. Those are my laws. And that's how I've been living my life. And I've been left alone pretty much by that whole system. Now that I've tried to remove myself from it as much as possible,
Right.
I don't get bothered by it. I don't get worried by it anymore. I don't even watch television. I don't watch the news. That whole crazy world that's going on,
Right.
it's going to go on whether you watch it or not,
Right.
and you're not going to change what they're putting on the television. I mean, they could show people helping people all day long on the
Right.
news because people are out there doing it. But they
Yeah.
want to focus on the horrible bad things that people do and
Right.
show that to you. So really, it's all about what you choose to surround yourself with.
Right.
If you
Well,
surround yourself with negative feelings and negative thoughts, you're going to start
right.
polarizing towards that negative side.
Well, dude, you're hitting so many great points, man, and it's definitely refreshing just hearing, as you said, that with all the craziness that is going around, just knowing that, whether people agree with the outcomes or the path in which you specifically are going, it's just a matter of that there are people just trying to do good deeds. If and just as you said, that voice in your head of like, I just want to be helpful, and I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of us really genuinely, and most of us from the bottom of our heart just want to be helpful and good people. And as we talked with everything else, that brings in energy. That brings
Oh,
that
it
brings
does.
it brings in electricity. And we know this, maybe we don't necessarily at the moment have all this data, but we know based off of just the way we talk about it. When people say, man, that person's got great energy, or when it's like, dude, whenever they walk into the room or whenever they're here, you just kind of want to be around them. Like, well, what is that? That's an attraction. What is an
Yeah.
attraction? You're getting an electric current or a magnetism basically in that moment where it's like I'm drawn to this person or this, you know, moment.
And that's what they're taking away from us with this stay 6 feet away,
Right.
cover your face. So much is said through your facial expressions.
Yeah.
You don't even have to understand what this language is the other person is speaking. You know if they're angry at you or if they're seeking help or if they're friendly just by looking at their face.
Yeah.
Now you put a mask over them, you have no idea what that person is really saying. And half the time you can't hear them because it's all mumbled.
Yeah.
But they're taking away our communication, our connection to each other. This ancient language that we all speak, no matter what language you speak verbally,
Yeah.
we all speak this microaggression language where we can see it in people and we know their intentions
Yeah.
just by this. And it's dehumanizing us. It really is.
Right.
It's separating us in so many ways, especially the magnetic field. Our magnetic field
Yeah.
only goes out about 3 feet in every direction.
Yeah.
Well, if you're 6 feet away from somebody now, you're never getting that feeling of, wow, this person's awesome. I'm really attracted to this, like you were
Right.
saying. You meet that. I just met this, I was helping this lady with some heater ductwork a couple weeks ago. And she
Mhm.
had her son and a couple of his buddies. They were younger. They were all like 18, 19. It was fun hanging out with a group of young guys like that again. They're so goofy. But one of them, and we were talking about him after they had left, you could tell he was an old soul.
Yeah.
He just had this way about him that, like, he was like that best friend that you just never knew you had. I got that feeling right away from him. And as soon as she said that, I knew what she was talking. There's just that
Yep.
some people have that. Yeah, they're just you, they're good.
Right. Well,
They're so good. It just exudes out of them. It pours out and makes you want to be good.
what's interesting is going into the old soul, right? Is understanding for those who believe that there is basically the soul is, you know, filtered back through this realm and just dealing with, you know, whatever past traumas or past obstacles that need basically a little more attention, you know, however long that may take, right? I think what's interesting is in my just my opinion is when you start to hear, because I hear it all the time, people say old soul, whether it's to me or just about other people, is I feel when we start using that old soul talk, it's kind of this almost intuitive understanding that whether you believe in it or not, that that soul is kind of reaching a pinnacle of some kind where they're
Hmm.
starting, like they've been through this, in my opinion, through this fractal on earth or whatever for so long that they're reaching a point where they're finally hitting that, as I said, that precipice of I'm figuring out the things in my past or even in this current life that I maybe missed in past ones or I disregarded or I ignored or whatever the case is. And this is my opinion. I have no proof of any of this. But when you hear it, right, most people aren't like, oh, this person's an old soul. They've been through so much. They've done so much bad things. It's like, oh, this person's an old soul. Like they've experienced things and they're really trying to figure it out now. Or
Yeah.
they're, you know what I mean? And that's just my opinion. I don't know if you have anything you want to chime in on that.
Yeah, it's almost like they're just here for the ride now. You
Yeah.
know, their subconscious or their soul, like we're like that's a great word. I love the word soul because,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's almost like they've been through so much and they've seen it all. Now they're just kind of sharing that. It's almost like they're not like they're done searching, but they've already been there and done it.
Right.
So it's hard to explain. Yeah, like they are just
Yeah.
this young man, and he was only 21.
Right.
But if I would have sat down and talked to him in a room and I couldn't see him and couldn't hear his voice, and just I would have thought he was an old man.
Yeah.
Just some of the things that he was saying, and just the wisdom that it's like the old soul. It knows when it hears wisdom, it
Hmm.
just absorbs it instantly. It doesn't have to think about it. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Like when you're a child, it's that little voice inside. When you're a child, when I saw the moon lander, I was 8 years old, Cape Canaveral.
Right.
And I asked my dad, well, where's the real one?
Yeah.
Because it just looked so fake.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I were an old soul, I would have never believed it. So I guess I'm not one of those old souls.
Well, and this is the thing, though. As you said, and I could be wrong, but when you hear and see shows like Kids Say the Darndest Things, or you hear stories about people's kids all of a sudden out of nowhere talking about something that's like, where did you learn that?
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where I think a lot of us have it, right? Talking about potentials. You hear it out of a lot of these children at times. And if we're like, no, 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 that's wrong, or no, that's not right, or stop talking, or whatever the case is, and not actually trying to take and be like, no, where did you hear that? Where did you learn that? And it's like, I don't know. Or these things like trying to, paying attention and not ignoring it or shutting it down, because if you're looking at it from the mindset that we are, it's like maybe that is that old soul speaking, right? Maybe it's still there. And if it's through kind of how we learn and how we grow, or the traumas that we deal with in the current life that we're living, that it gets pushed away or it gets suppressed, right? And it's like trying to pull that potential back out or to the surface. It's just, you know what I mean? You're kind of pulling through, you dug the stake really deep in the mud, and now you're really trying to get through this really, thick mud to try to get that back, to its prominence. And that's, these are just me spitballing ideas here. I have no proof of that. But what for me, where that comes from is exactly as I said, that children have such a capacity for learning and absorbing so quickly, and then mimicking, and then just really asking questions. And when you really take a second to think about how many questions a child asks, our son's not at that point yet, but when he is, as much as it might at times be like, all right, dude, I'm really trying to be my best to prepare and really be in the mindset of like, let me try to learn with him as best as I can, because he might be asking stuff
That's
that
the
I
best
really
way
have
to
no
do it.
idea. Right.
Yeah. If you don't have the answer, the best thing to do is to go look. Don't
Mhm.
make it up. Um, or really good answer is, I don't know. Because
Yeah.
I don't know means it tells them that, hey, this is something I
Right.
can go figure out.
Yep.
I think we telling the children that it's all figured out, like they like to tell us,
Mhm.
as we're growing up, well, this is figured in science. We know more about space than we do the ocean. And they tell us all this stuff. But I think if they were honest and just said, we don't know,
Right.
that would drive our children to strive to, learn so much more.
Oh,
I was talking about potential of children with the neighbor today while I was working on our yard. There's a savant in the house, a young man,
mhm.
just brilliant. He's with computers and programming and stuff like that. He programmed his first app at like 8 years old
Jeez.
for a cell phone. Yeah, by himself. Just came and showed his parents one day. Look what I did.
Wow.
Didn't ask him for help, just went and did it. Well, Bob Nodell, his father, taught him how computers add in binary at like 5 years old.
Wow.
And he comprehended it and understood. They are like little sponges. If you just keep giving them the information, they'll absorb it. And if it's the correct information, it is amazing how much they can hold, and they'll hold it for the rest of their lives. The
Yep.
stuff you learn when you're a child, that stuff stays with you. It's not like when I learned something and I got to go look it up again 2 days later because
Yeah.
my brain's all old and spongy.
Right.
No, those children, they're amazing. Just the
Yeah.
stuff they can learn multiple languages way quicker than
Totally.
an adult. There's so much that children can just zoop and absorb.
Yeah.
And if you give it to them, then that's, you know, every child has the ability to be a savant almost
Yeah.
if they're given the right answers.
Right. Well, the saying goes too, well, not saying, but, a lot of people who are in the mindset that we are, that when you talk about things like the Akashic record, and just there's this conscious memory that is being stored in this, let's just call it a cloud. Um,
Hmm.
it really is an ability to tap into that. And I think, as you said, children being sponges, there is what we're seeing is that they're tapping in, there's a purity to them, which is allows them to tap in a lot easier, all my opinion here. But we all know, this isn't new. It's harder as you get older to learn more languages. And we can say, oh, it's because we're, have more responsibilities. We have more things on our plate. Obviously stresses, which are all true. I'm not taking that away. But I've also learned from my own experience of when I was 18 or like 14 rather, I got a guitar. I was like, oh, I'm going to play guitar. I never played guitar. Didn't touch it for 4 years in high school. But once I was out of high school, I, didn't go to college, but I did a year doing something else. I came back. I was like, you know what? I'm going to learn this guitar. I was 19. So I taught myself how to play. Now I looked at videos and I was doing, but I like ultimately was like, I'm going to learn this thing. And I really allowed myself to, with all the other things that I was dealing with and whatever, I was just like, I'm going to just be with this. When I'm playing and I'm here, I'm just going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the fact that I was like, wait a minute, I've never played an instrument in my life and I was able to figure this out. And people say, oh, it's practice, practice, practice. And I'm not taking that away, but it's that ability to tap into that conscious state of going, okay, I'm here.
I'm going to do this.
I can figure this out. Again, potential. It's a change.
Exactly.
It's a different charge that occurs. Like for me, I'm not tech savvy. I really don't know what I'm doing. I can kind of just get by, but it's one of those things where for me, it's like if I were to really allow myself, as we talk mindsets and everything else, to go, okay, I'm going to sit, I'm going to actually figure this thing out. I know in my heart, I know in my soul that I could, and I can really allow myself. But as we get older, there's so much you can put your different minds to. But as a child, it's like, that part doesn't matter. You can just kind of pour it in and it just gets there. So I know I went on a little tangent there, but anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. That video we were talking about earlier, the incoherent electrostatic acceleration. I mean, I did that with that. I wanted to understand what made things fall down.
Right.
And I wasn't just going to regurgitate the word gravity and then go and play video games. I wanted to comprehend why this was happening.
Right.
And that video was an accumulation of over 3 years of research and testing and observations and playing. I mean, it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen in even a year. I had to watch those Walter Lewin videos. If I were a child, I probably could have done it in, 6 months. But it took me 3 years of watching the videos over and over and over. And it was like learning a new language, learning all what these words meant and everything. And it's a lot harder when you're older. It just,
Right.
When I was younger, like you said, you figure out, even 18, 19, that's when I started playing guitar too, right around that time. That's weird. Right around the same age. Yeah. But yeah, if you want to do something, anything, you can.
Right.
It may take time. It may take longer than the person sitting next to you took, but you can do it.
Yeah.
There's nothing out there that if you really want to fully, dive into something, then do it. There's nothing stopping you except yourself.
Yep.
I'm smelting stuff now. That's one of my new kicks. I just started. Yeah, I wanted to learn how to make my own rings and my own fishing hooks and stuff like that. I got a pan for panning for little chips of iron out in the river, and yeah, I'm going to learn how to do. Yeah, it's never stop learning. Never stop trying. If you see something, you're like, wow, that's cool. I wish I could do that. Don't say that. Do it. Don't wish you could do it.
Right.
Do it.
Well, I mean, and that goes to, as we talk about just potentials, right? We use the word potential for electric potentials. We use the, just potential by itself with training in my world. And when you start to see that, and I think I've said this in other videos, and maybe not with you guys, but one of the things is there's, I think a lot of us, there's not necessarily there's a fear of failure. Obviously, that's a thing, but every day there is failure, right? In the sense of, maybe you didn't get the deadline the way, or your project didn't get submitted or picked, or whatever the case is, or oh, I'm running late, or my whatever, right? There's going to be
Mhm.
moments of what we'd call quote unquote failure, but I really do believe that, as much as yes, it's people worried about failing along a journey, especially a longer journey, whether it's for like a fitness goal that could take a couple months, years, a couple weeks, but then like the journey of life, it
Mhm.
becomes a thing of, I believe, the idea of somebody actually seeing and reaching a potential. I think that's also so scary for people because and I don't want to say power in the sense of like a creator type power, but just the power of knowing that I am more than what I'm being told or I tell myself. And that
Yeah.
potential of literally that electric electric potential is something that also mimics and goes, right in correlation with the action potential of literally taking action as well. And that's something I see with like my job all the time. And you see a prime example when we watch those weight loss shows.
Mhm.
People, like, you see them going through not just the fitness change, but then you follow up years later, and if people are still on that path, right? It's like going now. All right, well, understanding that my potential, I've now we're seeing the physical transformation, but there's so much more. It's obviously the emotional, the mental, the psychological, the spiritual, and those are those pieces that I think when a lot of people don't want to tap into, it's because they realize that there's a potential there that means I'm gonna have to wake up a few
Yeah,
dragons. Go on.
with this great potential though, comes great responsibility.
Yep.
Have you ever heard of cloud bursting? You ever burst a cloud?
No.
Tried that?
No.
There's a movie called The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And in it, he's talking about being able to just burst a cloud with your mind, looking at a cloud and making it dissipate.
Yeah.
Well, one day I tried it and I did it. Okay. And it scared the crap out of me. And I didn't try it again for 2 years
What
because
is,
I was so just blown away by the fact that
so how's
we
that
have
work?
this potential. You you focus on a cloud,
Yeah.
and I turned into the wind. I pretended like I was wind going up into the cloud and just turning it into much smaller cloud, like blowing smoke at a smoke cloud.
Yeah.
That's what I imaged in my head. And there's even a YouTube video that I did of me bursting a cloud. It took me about 7 minutes to do that one. Usually I did it in like 3 or 4.
Hmm.
After I did it the first time though, I was so terrified of that potential. I didn't try it. I didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
And then I tried it again and I did it again and I was like, whoa. So I started showing people at work. And then I did it like 3 people and the third person kind of freaked out. So I quit showing people.
Wow.
But we have this potential.
Yeah.
I've told so many people this before on shows and stuff. Go try it. I don't know if anybody has,
Yeah.
but you never know these things until you actually give it a try. And if you go in thinking with a closed mind
Mhm.
saying, I can't do this, then you're not going to do it.
Right.
But if you go in even with a questioning mind, not just adamant and knowing you can do it, but is there a possibility I can do this? Just that question of it and then attempting to do it, it's that it was like showing me.
Mhm.
I asked a question, can I do this?
Yeah.
And it showed me, yes, you can. Now, I didn't have any doubt right away, because I was pretty open minded. This was well into flat earth. I was well open minded about all the lies and
Right.
the, human potential and what we can do. And there's all the different stories, little old ladies lifting up cars off their husbands and stuff like that. So I was like, hey, I'll give it a try with an open mind. I'm telling you, give it a try.
I'm
Now,
trying.
at the same time, be very careful. With great power comes great responsibility. One day I saw this picture, and it was one of those real long clouds that looks like a worm in the sky. You know what I'm talking, like
Mhm.
a, a front of clouds is moving in, and then they start like rolling back, and it makes a real long worm looking
Yeah.
beginning of the cloud. Well, I I saw all these clouds rolling in, and they said there was a storm coming. I was like, I'm going to see if I can do that. So I sat there for an hour and just stared in this one line and pretended like a big giant gust of wind was coming up and holding all these clouds right there. And it did. The next day, the next morning, I went out and that cloud formation was there. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I am so powerful.
Yeah.
Well, a couple hours later, about 40 miles southeast of there, a tornado happened.
Oh, wow.
And nobody died. It destroyed some stuff. But as soon as I heard that, I was like, whoa, did. Now, I'm not saying that I made the clouds do that, you
Right.
know, but if I did, if that was me, then I also probably had an effect on making that tornado.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
you have, we don't do things just because we can, you
Yeah.
know. That's one of my main things is it doesn't matter if you can do something. It should you do it.
Exactly. Well, it's what you see in movies all the time, and as we know, and we don't have to go too deep into it today, but it really is just a matter of knowing that there's going to be so much that's revealed and expressed in movies that do pertain to us in our everyday lives. It's just whether or not we're again open-minded to it, right? And when you have the glitz and glamour of certain things, it kind of will kind of desensitize the possibility of reality for a lot of us.
Well,
But
the beginning of that movie, it says more of this. This is based
oh,
than you would ever imagine, or something like that.
yeah, wait, can you
The
repeat
men
that?
who stare at goats.
Can you repeat it again? Because you broke out a little bit when you said that.
Oh, at the very beginning of the movie, it says this is based on a true story. That movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats,
Hmm.
and much more of it is, you know, nonfiction than fiction.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, yeah, this was a real program they started in the U.S. military called the Star Wars program. Like it was part of their Jedi Knight, the Jedi program,
Yeah.
where they were fighting wars using love and good, like the Jedi did in the movies.
Mhm.
And that's what it was all based off of. And that's what they were teaching me. It was all astral projection and all this stuff. It was being tested and, applied in our militaries back in the day. And I'm sure it still are now. It was very top secret back then. My stepdad was a military guy, and he even told me he had seen guys like this.
Yeah.
When they came to base, they all sat in a group, they talked to nobody else. They were even told, you don't go and talk to these people.
Yeah.
They slept in different barracks. They did things, no, nothing that the normal guys did, they were a part of.
Mm.
But he said he remembers seeing it, and they dressed different. They didn't have to wear the army. That's what they could have long hair and all this kind of stuff. And my stepdad was like, what is this?
Right.
What is this crazy unit that, and they weren't allowed to know anything about it. And
Interesting.
then I put two and two together. I bet that was one of the Star Wars programs, one of these Jedi Academy type things that they were trying back then.
Absolutely, man. I mean, it just goes to show you what the power of mind and the power of tapping into not just the mind, but then the mind body spirit connection
Mm-hmm.
in how you can use it, as you've said, for very, very good things, or you can use it on the other end of the spectrum and a lot of what we're seeing now, but just through time and what we ultimately, I think a lot of people do for themselves through the programming of, self-deception, anger, wishing ill will on others. And when you really go into it, and it's something I'm always working on myself, knowing the power that your conscious thought or your thoughts have, is that when you start to think it, more often than not, as we said, it can actually manifest. If you say something enough, it can manifest. Right? This person's gonna break up with me. This person's gonna break up with me. This person's gonna,
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna break up with you. You know what I mean? It becomes a thing. That's what you're putting out into uh, now the ether, but then also in your mind. same thing. It's still getting expressed out there. And I think that's the one important thing for myself is going, when you have something that is this powerful, and it's not just a separate group of men and women, whoever, that are dressed differently, it's knowing, okay, well, we all have it. And when we're saying we're going to put out good, not filling our minds, as you were mentioning earlier, with what's just on the news, or, it doesn't matter what side of this, you know, bird of this, the same bird with two different wings. It's just a matter of going, all right, I'm not going to let that filter in my head and take control. I'm aware of things happening. Great, cool. Well, what can I do to use my mind, or my energy, my mind, body, spirit, for the best that I possibly can?
Mm-hmm.
Some people can say that, oh, well, the certain things that you might say, or I don't agree with, or whatever, on social media. I'm like, okay, fine. You don't have to agree with me. It's really okay. But it's just really trying to dig a message of like, okay, well, what is a positive message? What is something, even if someone doesn't agree with me on other stuff, like what is the main message I can get across that's genuine, right? And you've nailed it on the head with a lot of the stuff you're saying. Just, you know, don't, treat thy neighbor well, right? It's all in the Bible. Just don't,
Yeah, it's
don't
very
just
simple.
really try to be the best person, take ownership. That's the one that I'm trying to express, but also myself really work on too. Just being able to take ownership for mistakes, knowing, okay, well, if I've made a mistake, was it me trying to be intentionally malicious, or was it um, from a selfish nature, right? Admitting to yourself that you might be like, oh, I'm not selfish, I'm selfless. It's like, well, what's the opposite? Okay, selfishness. Well, that's a part of you that you just don't want to understand. It's like the yin and the yang. It's all these things that we see
Mm-hmm.
in the stars, right? Every zodiac has its opposing zodiac, right? So knowing that dissection, that cross section rather, of, okay, well, what are they? What is their comparisons? What's their opposings? Um, so I know I kind of just went on a total rant there, but anything you want to
No,
add?
no, that was awesome. Yeah, no, yeah. Kind of what you said there. If we kind of ignore our faults. We try to, instead of focusing on them,
Right.
and until we focus on it and admit that we have this fault and admit that there's a problem, then you will never fix that problem.
Yep.
Now, I've been a well, I guess I don't drink anymore. I haven't drank in years, but I was an alcoholic at one time. I drank a lot of alcohol. I wasn't as bad as I've seen some people get. I didn't wake up and start drinking right away, but it was, as soon as I got home, an everyday thing, I was drinking a lot.
Hmm.
And until I could admit to myself that I had a problem, there was no, you know, oh, I'll just go out and have a beer and be okay. I would tell myself that, but then I would wake up the next day and, you know, not remember half the stuff I did the night before, or it'd be one of those nights. And yeah, you have to own it. Like you said, own it. If you make a mistake, own it. Be proud of it. It's a badge of learning. You've now learned something
Yeah.
from your mistake.
Well, going into potentials here, and even just that incoherent electrostatic acceleration, I know it's not exactly the same, but when you look at and experience these times for yourself or others where it's like, man, I'm never doing that again. Oh, dude, I'm not drinking like that again. Oh, I can't eat like that again. And then there's that constant gerbil hamster wheel of just making those same decisions. What you start to notice is there's those two voices in your head that are going like, okay, there's the positive, there's the negative. All right, I'm gonna make change. Okay, I'm in this system again. And I'm not saying positive, negative, one's bad, one's good. It's just a duality of self that's just kind of going back and forth. And as we said earlier, with deficiencies or whatever, your body's telling you something. So it's like,
Mhm.
for example, oh, I'm never drinking again. And then you start telling, yourself like, oh man, it's the act of not drinking anymore, that positive negative back and forth is where the problem is. But it's like, no, there's maybe a deficiency, or there's this incoherent understanding of more of who you are. I know I'm totally going all over the place here, of like that positive negative charge with maybe a trauma that you never dealt with as a child that's emotionally what
Hmm.
you're just expressing it through the alcohol, right? And this is nothing new, but it's just, learning for yourself, as you said, admitting, okay, like maybe I'm an alcoholic or I'm whatever the case is. But then just going, okay, well, why? And then taking a step further and going, like, how did I manifest this? How did this
Hmm.
decision get manifested here? Because I can go back and forth with alcohol time and time again, which a lot of us do, but then never a lot of times ever addresses really what's going on. This is just the outcome, right? Like I could pick at a wart for a long time, but the wart's telling me something.
Yeah, what did it for me was really that Fibonacci sequence, finding the creator. When I was an atheist that thought I was on the spec, and an accident and all this stuff,
Yep.
being an alcoholic, it didn't bother me so much. I was like, I'm just a speck. Who cares?
Right.
I'm gonna die. I'll be gone. Blah blah blah. And
Right.
then, I mean, this really finding the creator. I mean, however you find them, a lot of people are finding them through, the cosmology of our Earth now.
Yep.
They're realizing we've been lied to, and once it's like the saying goes, once you see his creation, you can no longer deny his existence.
Yep.
And
Oh
for
yeah.
me, that was the Fibonacci sequence. Once I saw that, it was easy to get over alcoholism.
Totally.
It just hit me that,
Yeah.
wait a minute, I am not this random speck. We were created with a purpose and something, and this isn't my purpose.
Yep.
This is absolutely not what I'm here for and to be doing. And that's when I started gardening and making my own medicine. And yeah, it just totally changed my life like in a flash.
And you, myself included, I had moments in my past with like atheism. My dad is in that, and I grew up hearing it. Even though I like when I would go with my mom, we go to church every once in a while. But it was one of those. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just one of those things where it was going in that same direction of just going, wow, I mean, what's the point? Like, if I just, die and I get buried, and you kind of start thinking in this mindset, but what ends up happening, as you said, is when people do find it, however they do, and understanding that there's a creator, we are in this creation, it's a perfect creation. You, as we said earlier, with just like math and learning, you just go, wow, I'm now in with new eyes. I am so excited. Even through, yeah, days will get stressful, things will bother you, and you're just, but
Oh yeah, life happens still.
right.
Yeah.
But it gives you a whole new perspective of going, this is teaching me something. I'm learning
Hmm.
something from this. Because now, and I've heard this from a lot of people. This isn't just me talking. I know, it sounds like you can definitely uh, confirm what I'm saying in your own experiences. But you start going, what is being taught here? Like, and just a quick example is, as a week ago, I was taking a run with my dog, and you know, as we're running, we're getting started. She has to go to the bathroom, so I'm like,
Okay.
like right when I'm getting ready to go, I'm getting jacked up. I was like, fine. So I'm having it. I have it wrapped up in like she has like a little hook on her leash, and so I'm running, and it keeps falling off the leash, and I'm getting frustrated because I'm like, this just won't stay on the leash, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to hold this bag. So and we're still like going out to the run, so I'm holding this bag, and I'm just like, and I'm getting mad, and I realized I was like, this is a sign. What is this telling me? And I thought, and as I was running, I was just focusing on my breathing, and this voice came in my head is literally was just like, shit, you're gonna have to deal with some shit when you get through hard times. It was literally like something so simple like that. Where I was like, you're gonna have to carry some shit. That's what it was. You're gonna have to carry shit through hard times. But then what really sparked with me, I was like, whoa. And as I'm running, and then it was going, but when you get through the hard time, in this example, the run, you can let it go. You can let
Nice.
and it literally like getting rid of the shit. Like, but it was for me, it was like a wow moment of just going, all right, this is a beautiful thing I could have learned instead of just getting mad and staying mad or irritated and letting it ruin the run. It was going, wow, no, this was a beautiful thing that I just got taught. in such a
Mm-hmm.
quick moment. And there's these things happening all the time. Hold on one second. I know we're getting towards the end. I want to just turn this off real quick.
Yeah, yeah, no rush.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to be beeping.
Yeah, no worries.
But
I
anyway,
got a little short story for you
yeah,
like that.
please. Yeah.
I even made a YouTube video on it. It said, "Shh, it happens sometimes,"
Yeah.
or something like that. I'd got my electroscope. I was so excited, and it has a gold leaf piece of foil on it. And I've never played with gold foil, leaf foil before. I had no idea. And my hands were kind of sweaty. I was all excited. And the gold leaf wasn't like perfectly laying flat. So I went and I touched it with my finger. Well, if you know anything about gold leaf, you do not touch it with your hands because it will stick to your hands and just disintegrate into nothing, like really quick.
Yeah.
And I didn't buy any of the extra gold leaves, you know,
Yeah.
and I didn't even get to use the thing yet. So I destroyed it pretty much before I even got a chance to use it. I mean, I ordered more gold leaves and I can put them on there. So it wasn't destroyed, but it was destroyed to the point where I could not play with it for at least a week now. I had to order these things and this,
Mm.
but I only got mad for about 2 seconds. This was one of those defining moments in my life where as soon as it happened, I got up really mad and angry and frustrated. And then right away, I was like, wait a minute, it's okay. I
Yeah.
made a mistake. I learned something from this, and life is going to go on. I'll,
Right.
I'll get some more. I'll put it on. And now I've learned I don't touch the gold leaf foil with my hand. That's, and yeah, I even made a video about it.
Dude.
And it wasn't about the gold leaf foil or anything like that. It wasn't about the electroscope. It was about me learning,
Yep.
yeah, that these things are going to happen all the time. They're accidents. We're always going to it doesn't matter how good you are at your whatever you're doing. You could be a master at it. Masters still make mistakes.
Oh,
It's how
totally.
you handle your mistakes and how you keep your composure when these things happen. We have to always keep our wits about us. That's what makes us different from a child.
Yep.
Is ability to control those emotions and keep focused on what you're doing and not let it ruin your day. Like you said, you weren't going to let that ruin your day anymore.
Yep. But
That's how we have to look at these things.
I agree, man. But to what you're saying, bringing it kind of full circle is when you understand your potential as a human, electrically, magnetically, just as a whole body, a whole aura, everything, is then you start to know those shifts. As we said, life is gonna happen, but it's understanding it's like when those shifts, whether it's more that positive, negative charge, whatever is occurring, is that there is actually something electrically happening within you, right? Is when you do get stressed, for example, and you allow it to ruin your day, we can get into the science of like, or the adrenal glands are now in full force. Your cortisol is kicking in, your body's depleting itself of certain vitamin, metals, and things like that in order to sustain this state you're in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can show like there's an electric charge and shift in currency happening when we have these different emotions. And that's why what's so great and when we hear in the movies and all these different places of like learning how to hone that potential, learning how to just really sharpen it, is, as you said, was learning how to allow the mistake or whatever that happened to really take it as a learning moment to go, okay, I have a charge that just occurred. What am I going to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can then take it in a direction, as you said, that literally is going to be more beneficial. Not only is that going to then, something's clicking over there.
I'm sorry about that. I don't know what's going.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm hearing everything.
Yeah. So anyway,
It's a new headset. I'm not sure if this is an old. Well, it's not new. It could be old. I'm not really sure.
No worries, man. I just want to make sure everything was good on your end. Nothing like,
Yeah, no,
um,
I'm hearing good.
So anyway, it was just for me, it just taking it full circle, knowing that there is these charges that are always happening. It is what is literally a big component of what's keeping us on the ground. It's what's keeping us stable. It's allowing us to connect with, the earth. Is these potentials all the time? These electrostatic or incoherent electrostatic acceleration, all that.
Yeah, and it never stops. It never stops. Um, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I think it's what holds this place together. It's kind of the ether, I guess, the electric field and the magnetic field and these things combined.
Mhm.
Like if this wasn't happening, I don't know if matter would even exist.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I can't go test it because there's no place that these things don't exist.
Right.
I've been racking my brain trying to create a place where there is no electric field, but I'm having trouble.
Yeah, I think everyone's having trouble on that. But dude, I don't want to keep any more. I know you got a big one tomorrow with your stuff, but is there anything that you want to leave people with? Any last minute comments, thoughts?
um, as we were talking earlier, if you haven't tried it yet, try to go start a garden.
Yeah.
It's one of the greatest things. It's like having a family all in one year. You get all those emotions and all those, but connect with nature. Go say hi to a tree, listen to nature. If you're feeling anxiety and depressed and you know there's things going on in your life, back in the day what a doctor would tell you is go sit by the river for 10 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Go for a walk in nature. That was the medicine back in the
Yeah.
day when people had these problems. So, and it works.
I,
I've prescribed it to so many people.
yeah.
And you can't go out there and focus on the things going on in your head. You have to go and observe nature and focus on it, and you'll feel better. It's it's that simple. That's the one of the best medicines there is, besides maybe laughter.
Yeah. Dude, I'm with you on that one, and I can attest to all of what you said through my own experiences many times. So, if anyone feels that, Zach nailed it on the head. But that all being said, beautifully, man, where can people find you? Where's
Um,
yeah,
my YouTube channel is GudTims4All. It's spelled kind of weird. You can see GudTims, the number 4ALL. I'm also a part of a group called Iron Realm Media. We do a live morning shows on Tuesdays and Friday morning at 5 a.m. Eastern on tfrradio.com. And we do a live YouTube show every Friday night Eastern, and that's on Iron Realm Media podcast
all right,
channel. Iron Realm Media, yeah.
beautiful.
So yeah, it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, usually about 7 hours a week live,
Mhm.
and then there's so much research and stuff that we are doing, and it's like ever since this started, life has become so amazing. It really has. I love learning. It was like being reborn. Like you said, it's like being reborn again. Once you find that there's a creator and that we've been lied to, it makes this place so much more magical. It really does.
And just to kind of cap with that, and just add one quick note, it's when people realize that when you were created with a purpose, you have a purpose for being here. And why would anybody lie? It's because someone's afraid of what you're capable of. And you don't
Yeah.
even realize that's happening for a lot of people. And when someone's afraid of what you're capable of, and I'm not saying in a negative way, I mean, could it lead that way? Sure. But the positive change that you can make and that you can bring to this life shows just exactly what Zach's saying is you have purpose, you have reasons for being here. Nature is going to give you those answers. So anyone who might be second guessing this and thinking, well, where they come from, they're this or that. just understand that we're trying to learn and grow and get excited about these things that we're talking about because we want ourselves to go through that experience, but we want to be able to share with others because you and I are meeting through the grapevines of people who are literally in the same mindset. And look, we can have a beautiful conversation about these things, and it's not taking it down crazy rabbit holes. It's really just ultimately bringing it back to the most simplistic thing of just going, all right, what's up? What is what's laughter? What's fun? What's happiness? What's electricity? Like just asking questions.
Yeah, this is the greatest time to be the best apocalypse ever. That's
Yeah,
how I say it.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and if people are scared of the word apocalypse, there's a reason they wanted you afraid of that word.
Right.
It means the revealing of all truths.
Yep.
No more secrets, no more hidden lies, no more deceptions.
Right.
That's what an apocalypse is. It's a great thing. And if people would realize that, maybe it could come about. Maybe if people weren't afraid of this great thing and putting that energy out to stop the apocalypse, let's all welcome the apocalypse. Let's all embrace it and say, hey, I would like to know about those people that are lying to me. I don't want to have my head in the sand anymore.
Yeah.
I am a powerful being here on this place that is created for me. There
Yeah.
is no other man or woman that can tell you what to do. They can't. You can listen to them
Of
or
course.
you can choose not to. We are so divine and powerful, and that's what they're hiding from you.
Right.
Is you can go out and change the world and make it better all by yourself. It may just be a little corner of the world,
Yep.
but you can do that. And if everybody did that and realized their potential, they would be a thing of past. We would write stories about them. It'd be over. We would be. It's going to happen. I can see it.
And here's the beautiful thing, man, is all those things that I agree with, but it's just knowing that kind of wrapping it up. It's God has a plan, and God is setting this tone, and just knowing I'm on this journey of reaching my own potential, but knowing that at the end of the day, putting your faith in Him, and just knowing He's gonna guide those. It's gonna not seem like it in the moment, but you just said
Mm-hmm.
you can feel it. It's intuition. What is all that? It's that connection with source, man. So, but dude, anyway, thank you so much for your time, brother. We'll definitely have to do this again soon. But yeah, until then, we'll see you guys.
Thanks a lot.